Good morning, everybody. It is, sorry for those that were following along live. We're a little late. We had a little technical issue with our audio, but that is resolved now. So I'd like to welcome you to a special meeting of council for Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. It is 10:19 a.m. and this meeting is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel tomorrow if you're not watching live right now. So I'd like to acknowledge the town of Midland recognizes located on land which is traditional and treaty territory of the Anishinaabe people, now known as the Chippewa Tri-Council, comprised of the Beausoleil First Nation, Rama First Nation, and Georgina Island First Nation. The territory is within Pre-Confederation Treaty 5 and Treaty 16 and included within the Williams Treaties of 1923. Town of Midland recognizes located on land which is traditional treaty territory of the Huron-Wendat and the historic homeland of the Métis, and that our town is home to a large and diverse community of Indigenous people. I do have two people in the room here, so I will deliver my safety message in the gallery just in case. I think one of you has heard this one more than once. But should the fire alarm activate, please exit the room in an orderly fashion and proceed to the evacuation assembly area, which is located in the upper parking lot. You can exit through the main entrance, those double glass doors behind you, make an immediate left and proceed out the front doors or through the secondary exit here, where you will proceed up the stairs, check the door for heat. Before opening, if it's safe, exit on the second floor and turn right and proceed out the door in front of you. Washrooms are located on the second floor and the elevator is located just outside the main entrance. As Midland has a respectful workplace policy, anyone exhibiting violent or harassing behavior will be asked to leave, and members of the audience are to remain in order and quiet and not to address council except with the permission of the chair. All cell phones and pagers, it's a good time to remind myself, should either be turned off or set to non-audible. No person shall display signs or placards, applaud participants or in debate, or engage in conversations, electronic or otherwise, or behave in a way that may disrupt proceedings of council. For anyone requiring an assistive hearing device, advise the clerk and she'll arrange with our IT staff to provide you with that device. Council meetings are recorded via Zoom and are posted to the town's YouTube site. The meetings are also broadcast on Rogers TV, Midland Channel 53, one meeting per month, and live stream via Rogers TV Midland, which can be accessed through the Town of Midland website. Individual recording, broadcasting, or streaming the meeting by public or any member is not permitted without express consent of the clerk and all those present. That consent is being sought and granted for this exemption. So we have two media partners in the house tonight. So record away. So with that, I'd just like to ask for a moment of silent reflection before we get into today's meeting, special meeting. Thank you. Council, now we are missing a couple councilors, but we still have quorum. And once again, this video will be available online for reviewing afterwards, so they still get the benefit of our guests' jewels of wisdom that will drip upon us shortly. And so with that said, is there any declarations of conflict of interest relating to today's subject matter, Council? Okay. Can't imagine so, but if there were something to arrive, well, as we proceed, just throw your hand up and we could deal with it at the time. So I have a motion here moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Patel, that the contents of the special meeting of council agenda for May 14, 2025 be approved. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Next, moved by Councillor East, seconded by Councillor Patel. That's for after the presentation. I'm getting ahead of myself. So just a little preamble. A lot of times you'll find municipalities going in camera to receive training like this, or what can be constituted as legal advice when the presenter is in fact a lawyer. However, given the nature of the subject matter, which are the strong mayor powers that the province has bestowed upon a number of municipalities, including Midland, it was widely believed by not just this council, but by other councils that this kind of public education, because of the keen interest by the communities that it impacts, is best done in a public session. So we've opted, as many of our peer municipalities have before us, not to go in camera, even though this technically qualifies. Just out of an abundance of transparency. We want the community to be able to learn and hear exactly what we're learning from our guests today, and to be able to participate in this, one could arguably say, a violent change to our democracy in the way things have been for many, many years. And of course, we're about to learn what those impacts are and some of the perils that could befall us if we're not careful. and what, if anything, can be done about the bestowing of these powers on our municipality specifically. So with that, we have a presentation. We have John Mascarin from Aird Barreless LLP to present to council. And John, as a spoiler alert, I've had the privilege to have John give basically this presentation to myself and the clerks and the CAO. And after receiving it, it became immediately obvious that all of council would definitely benefit from this presentation. So we asked him back, and I see from watching live streams from other municipalities, he's definitely doing the circuit, and many municipalities are benefiting from this update and the learnings in the Q&A session that follows. So without further ado, welcome, John, virtually, and take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for that kind introduction. Good morning to you and to the members of council. I'm very pleased to be here today. And as you indicated, Mr. Mayor, I'd given you you and senior staff a concise version of what I'm to present today. I think today's a little more expansive because I think you've described it as a violent change. And I hadn't heard that word, but I would agree with that. It's certainly a significant change to the local democratic governance system that's been in place in Ontario for many, many years. In fact, it's the system that's in place in all jurisdictions in Canada. Ontario is the one that seems to be doing something very different here, and I'll explain the differences in the prologue to my introduction. So if it's all right with you, Mr. Mayor, I will share my screen now and put up my PowerPoint presentation, and then I can walk council through it. I think, do I have the authority to do so?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Terrific. Do you?
Oh, I think technically you need to be granted that authority to share your screen. I think we're working on that now. Just
Oh, okay, great.
We have to throw the switch, as it were.
I apologize. Yes, you're permitted to screen share, John.
All right, I'm just going to try it. Just going to go back and try it one more time. It looks like it's generated. All right. Now, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to ask you, I'm in your hands. I found what has worked very well, but I'm happy to do whatever you and council would prefer. I can take some breaks at natural points and stop and ask if there are any questions. I found that works quite well because I'm actually looking at the PowerPoint slides and I'm not paying attention to who may raise their hands. However, if you'd like, I'm happy to have questions throughout. It's whatever you would like me to do, Mr. Mayor.
That format you just described seemed to work well in other municipalities. So,
okay.
Councillor, are you good with that? So he'll present, it's kind of broken down into sort of salient sections, and then undoubtedly there'll be some Q&A that follows. So, but if there is something that is just burning through your mind as he's talking about it, throw your hand up. We can interrupt him and have him answer. But failing that, there'll be a spot at each section that he covers.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So how did we even get here? Like, what was the thought about this? I think that's the question that's being asked by a lot of members of council, including the heads of council and the public. Well, look at this. There was a book that was published some 9 years ago by an actual reputable publisher, HarperCollins, 2016. The ascribed authors are our current premier and his now deceased younger brother, Rob Ford, who was a one-term City of Toronto mayor, a long-time council member there. This quote is attributed to our premier. "If I ever get to the provincial level of politics, municipal affairs is the first thing I would want to change. I think mayors across the province deserve stronger powers. One person in charge with veto power." Now, that was written, well, it was published 9 years ago, but that was probably informed, and Doug Ford's comments there were probably informed by the experiences of his brother at Toronto City Council. He had been a long time council member and then decided to run for mayor and was elected in 2010 and had a very let's say, controversial tenure for 4 years, his term of office, 2010 to 2014. It was marked by a whole bunch of chaos, disruption, and actually not a lot of work. In one sense, many of the votes at Toronto City Council, remember at the time it was 45 members on Toronto City Council, were sometimes 43 to 2. You can probably guess who the two were. So I think Doug Ford, who was a one-term council member in the city of Toronto, saw his baby brother not getting his agenda moved forward, and I think felt a little frustrated, as Rob Ford did many times. So that's the first contextual thing that you should bear in mind. The second one is the father, the patriarch of the Ford family, was a one-term member of provincial politics in Queen's Park, and he was an MPP for 4 years, for 3 years, well, 4 years, and so there was some awareness of what provincial politics were. Now, the father of the Premier Ford created a very successful company, probably well known, Deco Labels and Tags, very well known company here in Ontario, with its head office in Chicago, which is probably the prototypical strong mayor city in the United States. There are a number of other ones, most larger urbanized municipalities, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, are strong mayor municipalities. Chicago is probably the most well-known, and it goes back many years. You've probably heard the urban legends. Mayor Daley stole the election for John F. Kennedy in 1960 over Richard Nixon because he was a strong mayor and wielded that much power that he could influence the federal election. Well, it goes to show that there is some background and historical context to how we possibly got here. So you've got this idea to have mayors with veto powers, which the mayor of Chicago clearly has, and other big city mayors in the United States. By the way, I should say there are a number of strong mayor municipalities also in Europe, but it's mostly well known because of the United States. The city of London, Munich, Germany, I think Paris, France are all strong mayor type municipalities. So what you have to do, though, is if you get elected in provincial politics, and Premier Ford has been very successful, 3 successive terms as a majority government here in Ontario, you have to find an excuse. How do I implement this? Well, you've got the Ontario housing shortage. February of 2022, just before the provincial election that year, the report comes out of the Housing Affordability Task Force here in Ontario. The first words, Ontario's in a housing crisis. And who are the culprits? Well, all fingers seem to be pointing to municipalities. Why? Development restrictions, zoning restrictions, official plan designations that don't allow housing to be developed readily and easily. Then you have the financial aspects to it, development charges of the Development Charges Act, building permit fees under the Building Code Act, and planning processing fees under the Planning Act, and add upon that user fees and charges put in place in 1996 by the Harper government in Ontario by the Savings and Restructuring Act. Those are things that municipalities have some dominion over. And finally, building permits just don't get issued quickly enough. Building officials just don't move fast enough. So building permit delays. All things, by the way, that the province can deal with. And what have you seen in the last couple of days? Bill 17 come forward. What do? It purports to take back some of the authorities for the development restrictions. Attempts to now roll back some of the clout that municipalities have over development charges, and puts in place some preclusions where there will be no building permit delays because the Building Code Act may not apply to certain things. These all came out just recently, but you have the strong mayor powers preceding this by several years. So you've got this coming to the province. So what does the province do? It sets a goal of building 1.5 million new homes here in Ontario by the end of 2031. Since then, the province has actually acknowledged that that's just a baseline and much more is actually needed. You will see that this factors in very, very prominently in what the province has now done to put in place strong mayor powers. But before we get there, strong mayor powers, described by Mayor Gordon today as a violent change, I would call it a very landscape shifting change for local democracy here in Ontario. What have we always had? We've had a weak mayor system. That doesn't mean that the mayor is a weakling. It just means that the historic local government system here in Ontario since pre-Confederation, even when it was Upper Canada back in the 1850s, and all jurisdictions throughout all of Canada, which really have emulated and followed the system here in Ontario, it has been a weak mayor system where the head of council is the leader, but he's a leader among equals, only has a single vote at council, and has very limited executive authority that he or she can implement unilaterally. You can just think probably of a handful here in Ontario. One, under the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act, where the mayor can declare a state of emergency in a municipality and then seek to implement with special powers the emergency plan. At a council meeting, if someone's acting unruly or disrupting the proceedings, the mayor can, without asking for anyone, expel someone from the meeting. That's the authority under Section 241. But apart from those, there are few and far in between limited unilateral authorities, executive powers that have been granted to the head of council. My colleague and I wrote this published paper, which we put out even before the legislation was enacted, Bill 3, the Strong Mayors Building Homes Act. We wrote, the role of the mayor has traditionally been viewed as a consensus builder, one where the head of council must work together in a spirit of cooperation and compromise with the other elected representatives of the municipality, i.e., the council members, to achieve a desired result. Why? Because the mayor only has one vote on council. This now has significantly changed. By the way, it's enshrined currently by Section 5, primarily Section 5 of the Municipal Act. The powers of a municipality shall be exercised by its council, okay? And the powers are to be exercised by bylaw unless the municipality is specifically authorized to do otherwise. Now, as you probably know, the municipality is expressly authorized to do otherwise in a number of instances. Just think of a council meeting. Do you pass bylaws? Yes, of course you do. But do you do something else? Yes. You often pass resolutions of council, and that's how the business of council goes forward. Often, at the end, entrenched by the confirmatory bylaw that puts in place and accepts everything that has happened at the meeting. All the decisions, orders, directions, resolutions, and other actions of the council are confirmed by bylaw so that you have technical compliance with Section 5 sub 3. Strong mayor powers is a way that the municipality is specifically authorized to do otherwise. So, therefore, there is a specific override to the traditional that municipalities have to proceed only by bylaw. So I'm now going to turn to the strong mayor powers. And Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to take a break because that's just some historical context. So here are the sources of the strong mayor powers. The first one, look at that, Bill 3. It was one of the first bills that were put forward by the second majority government of Doug Ford back in the summer of 2022. You will recall there was an election in June of that year, and Premier Ford received a second mandate for his progressive conservative government in Ontario to form the government. What Bill 3 did, with nary a word from anyone, including the Premier, so he kept this well under wraps. There was no mention of this during the election campaign. Premier Ford didn't mention it, nor did any provincial Conservatives running for office. There was, of course, no mention by any of the other parties because they didn't foresee this coming. The Strong Mayor Building Homes Act was proposed in August of 2022 and was fast-tracked, approved. Third reading was given in September and royal assent, I believe, the following day in early September. What that statute did is it added an entirely new part to the Municipal Act and what I refer to as CODA, which is the City of Toronto Act, which is a part called Special Powers and Duties of the Head of Council. Now, you cannot read that part alone. You have to interpret it with some other sources. The second source was another statute, the unfortunately and ironically named Better Municipal Governance Act, Bill 39, which was enacted in October or perhaps November of 2022, which added one new section, but it's a very significant and it's a very controversial section to the Municipal Act, to Part 6.1. That's the statutory framework, but you have to read the statutes together with two regulations. The first one, 530.22, is the actual section, the regulation that allows strong mayor powers to be given to municipalities. The way it's done, there is a section 1, and it lists the municipalities that have been designated as strong mayor municipalities by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. It is the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing that is granted the statutory authority under Section 284.2 of the Municipal Act to be able to designate municipalities. That's technically how it operates. And you'll see that there's a long list of municipalities there by amendment, by regulation that the minister has put in place. There were 3 separate tranches of authorities given by former Minister Steve Clark, and there were the recent announcements of 170 new additional municipalities to have these strong mayor powers, including the town of Midland, that were given by Minister Rob Flack. Those are put in place by regulation. Regulation 530.22 also has a number of technical and procedural rules for how the strong mayor powers are to be carried out or implemented. I will not get into a great degree of detail to that level, but I will be making some mention of those powers and those authorities and procedural rules. And finally, there are the prescribed provincial priorities. There are 3 specific strong mayor powers in Part 6.1 that only exclusively relate to prescribed provincial priorities. The minister has prescribed the priorities of this provincial government in Regulation 58022, and I won't be giving too much away to say that the provincial priorities of this provincial government are housing and infrastructure to support and relate to the provision of housing here in Ontario. I will show you the full provincial priorities regulation in just a moment before I show you the provincial priority powers. So just briefly, I want to highlight the rollout of how this came to be. The powers, the strong mayor powers, were originally given only to the mayors of Toronto and Ottawa. As I indicated, Minister Steve Clark granted the powers only to the cities of Toronto and Ottawa by designating them. Actually, the city of Toronto wasn't even designated. It was given by statute under the City of Toronto Act. They were given by comments made specifically by the minister at the legislature and by the premier in press conferences, that they were originally given only as a pilot project. Why the cities of Ottawa and Toronto? The premier was very clear. Those two municipalities were in the most dire need for housing, including particularly affordable housing. And they were given, the minister said, because those two municipalities were shovel ready and could start constructing new homes immediately. So it was sold to the province as this is a pilot project. Well, less than 1 year later, on June 16th, 2023, it was announced that on Canada Day, just a couple of weeks later, 27 additional municipalities would be receiving these strong mayor powers. Now, this was based on population and projected population growth, and the cutoff was 100,000 people population for the municipalities. That is how those 27 additional municipalities were chosen. Move forward, just a few months later, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, then Steve Clark, reached out to 22 additional municipalities and said, municipalities, you will receive strong mayor powers on Halloween if your mayor signs on and executes a pledge to accede to the provincial construction housing targets and does so by October the 15th. You'll see that 18 municipalities came forward. There were 4 municipalities for various reasons whose mayor, remember this is before strong mayors were granted, whose mayor did not sign on and pledge to comply with the provincial construction housing targets. So you had at that point 47 municipalities that had been designated. And then on April the 9th, there was a press release issued by the Ontario Newsroom. Ontario proposing to expand strong mayor powers to 169 additional municipalities. Once again, notwithstanding that there is a specific statutory provision in Section 3 of the Municipal Act that says the province shall consult with municipalities as to new legislation that may affect them. No prior notice was given to the proposed 169 new municipalities that were, for the first time, proposed to have strong mayor powers. So this is very interesting. On April the 9th, there was an announcement made that there was proposed additional municipalities of 169 new municipalities that would get this power. And this was posted on the ERO registry for comments. presumably because some municipalities might not have wanted these powers. And there was a 1-week commenting period to April 16th. I believe a lot of municipalities and perhaps their legal advisors, me included, said, hey, the province, the minister might listen to you, provided that you can send something in, a resolution of council, preferably something that might be unanimous, with the mayor also agreeing with the resolution that says, we don't want these powers. I thought it might potentially get it within the eyesight of the minister. Well, it was interesting because on May the 1st, there was an announcement that 170 municipalities, one better than the province had said on April the 9th, and I'll explain why that is, that would receive, as of that date, strong mayor powers. And Mr. Mayor, you received this letter. It was sent to 170 heads of council. And as you can see, there's an expansion to 170 municipalities, and the final sentence, this includes your municipality. Just going back one slide, it was provided to the heads of council of single or lower tier municipalities. Notice no upper tiers, and I'm wondering what the province is signaling by that. And instead of population growth, which had marked the first 3 tranches, so the first one, Toronto and Ottawa, the second one, population growth or population of 100,000, the third tranche in October of 2023, municipalities with population of over 50,000 people, or projected to be 50,000 persons. Here, there was no consideration of population. The list was any councils having 6 or more members. That's how the province determined who would get strong mayor powers. Went through the list of 444 municipalities and said, the standard, the minimum that councils can have is 5 members. Why don't we just look at anything over 5? So councils with 6 or more receive strong mayor powers on May the 1st. AMCTO, the Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers, has been very vocal about this and has argued that while the justification for strong mayor powers has been to build more homes, there hasn't been anything that actually shows a marked increase in construction arising directly from the use of strong mayor powers. And in fact, it's shown that their research shows something markedly different, and a erosion of the governance arm of the municipality, which is council, and the blurring of the distinction between the governance and the administrative functions has been exceedingly strong in advocating about this legislation. AMO, on the other hand, has taken probably the weakest type of approach to this, expressed some concern, but openness to the idea. And its current statements after the 170 municipalities were granted, just look at what AMO's president, Westport's mayor, has said. Not very strong at all. It's just a very, I don't know, rather weak position on this from AMO, an organization that I'm involved in, just about to go to their spring conference tomorrow. The Ontario Municipal Administrators Association have taken a very different position and very strong, mostly aligned with AMCTO. So, Mr. Mayor, that's the historical background, and I've done that really to bring council up to date as to how these powers were thought of and created, how they've been rolled out, what the change has been from council making decisions now to the mayor potentially making some strong decisions. So I'm not sure there's going to be any questions, but this is the first natural break, and I'll just pause for the moment if there's any questions at this point.
Okay, I don't see any. I think because the main meat. Oh,
Okay,
Councillor
terrific.
McDonald, sorry, Councillor
Oh.
McDonald's got one. And just one little tidbit for you, John, too. This is for the treasure trove. The one other weird oddity that mayors, I guess one other authority that mayors have always had, that their counterparts don't, is in the Criminal Code of Canada. A mayor is listed as a peace officer. So to what end, I'm not sure, but one other little oddity, it's in there. I guess it would make, if someone punched me in the face for a decision I made, it would be assault peace officer. But anyway, it's just a little factoid for you. I'm sure you're well aware of that. But
Mr. Mayor, I wasn't, and I learned something every day. Thank you for that. I've actually written this down. I'm going to go look up that section. Thank you.
no problem. Councillor McDonald.
Here we go. Good morning. Thank you for the history lesson on the strong mayor's power. I wrote a few notes on several of your slides, if I'm allowed to make some comments. Okay, on the slide with the slide 5, I believe, where it says Housing Affordability Task Force, it's developed why? Because there's development restrictions, development fees, levies and charges, and building permit delays. I know the town of Midland has been working very hard to remedy these remedy these problems. The goal to set 1.5 million new homes. My comment there is, will they be affordable? It's fine to build a whole 1.5 million homes, but if people can't afford to live them, what's the use having empty homes? I think that my own personal opinion is to have a livable wage where they can make them. On slide 8, head of council is a leader among equals, has only one single vote and limited unilateral executive authority. This is the way the council works for it as a team. We've worked very hard working with our mayor, and when there is something that is not agreed upon, the mayor accepts that and moves on. But this is, I think it's going to break up the team. And I often say there's no I in team. The mayor should only have one vote. He was on the weak mayor's system. I don't know. To me, it wasn't broke, so why fix it? We're working fine. Well, I'm waiting to hear more of the education on what specific powers, the 3 specific powers you mentioned, housing, infrastructure, and I don't remember what the third is. But I was very pleased to see the advocacy update on these from the clerks union. Their research indicates strong mayor's powers have blurred the political administration authority. And I strongly believe that as well. I've sort of missed the boat on when you mentioned the 1 week for councils to have the resolution. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on that. I know I have copies of some council members that did pass in their strong mayor's power, don't want these powers. Where did I miss that we didn't have the chance to discuss that, or at least I'm not aware of that we had this opportunity brought to our attention, is my only question after these comments.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McDonald, and thank you for those comments, Councillor. My comment about the 1 week when the Ontario newsroom issued the press release about that, that's on the slide right now. It was April the 9th. It posted the list of municipalities that were proposed to get strong mayor powers on the environmental registry, and it said if anyone has any comments, it's going to be here. It's going to be here for 1 week until April the 16th, and anyone typically could go on the website itself and post comments on there. That's typically done because the province signals we will consider any views that you may have. So you have a period to comment on. Typically, the period is not as short as 1 week. So there was, at least to my thought, an opportunity for a municipality to say, let's consider this. What are we going to do about strong mayor powers? What's the will of council? And I thought if a council decided to pass a resolution to say, Mr. Minister, thank you, but no thank you. We just don't think we need the strong mayor powers for some of the reasons, and probably in addition to what you were saying, Councillor McDonald, that council works well, council works cooperatively, and things are done by consensus. And by the way, we are unanimous in doing so, and the mayor agrees with us and doesn't want the powers. I would have thought that that would have at least gone into a factor that the minister would consider. And there was that 1 week period up until April the 16th, from April the 9th to April the 16th. And I know a number of councils, if they did meet and had the opportunity to have an actual proper meeting and pass a resolution, there were a number of councils that did something very similar to the way I described it. And together with the mayor, who may have agreed to the resolution, may have voted in favor. I also urged councils to write directly to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and voice their concerns, and I would have thought that there would have at least been some consideration. I don't know if there was any consideration given, but as I indicated on the next slide, there was notice given on May the 1st that not only were 169 municipalities granted the powers, but actually it was 170. I think the reason of the difference in number there is because the city of Orillia had been granted strong mayor powers temporarily to the end of June by Minister Rob Flack, and they weren't included originally in the 169. That's why it was 70. So 170, sorry. So Councillor McDonald, I hope that explains what I meant by that 1 week period. It was the date of the announcement on April the 9th and the date of the ending of the commenting period on the environmental registry dealing with the strong mayor powers.
Thank you. It was a token offer for an opportunity to comment, just to say that we had a chance. There were several letters written to the Honorable Rob Flack expressing the concern about diminishing the role of elected municipal councillors in representing their community, negative impact on public trust. And I'm not addressing these specifically to our mayor. It's all in general. It's a disservice to every community. The mayor was elected as an equal, a leader, no doubt, but not someone that can just veto. I mean, as you can read, I'm not in favor of the strong mayor power, and but I appreciate being educated on it. But every elected member of this council was in a decision-making power, if that's not the word I want to use, but the strong mayor's power will fundamentally it weakens the democratic principles of majority vote and majority rules. So I'll let you proceed and maybe you can change my mind, but that's the way I feel.
Mr. Mayor, you okay if I proceed on now?
Yeah, we're good.
Terrific. So, Councilor McDonald, thank you for those comments. You'll probably hear where I stand on some of these in a moment. I'm divided up the strong mayor powers into there's four bullets, but really they're in three groups, and I will explain each one in some detail. I'll go in and actually talk about the specific authorities in part 6.1. So when we talk about strong mayor powers, we're essentially talking about that group of powers that I'm going to just now walk you through, which are in part 6.1 of the Municipal Act, okay? And again, as I said earlier, you have to read them together with the regulations, which set out certain rules. So I've divided them into these categories. If you do some reading on this, not everybody divides them into these specific categories. The first grouping I've called administrative powers, and I'll explain why. I've also seen some municipalities refer to them as administrative and political powers. Okay, that's fine. That's not the way I would normally think them. The second grouping I have listed as provincial priority powers. And the reason I've done that is these powers can only be used specifically for provincial priorities. Whether a mayor would like to not have something interfere with a provincial priority, or a mayor would like to have something advance a provincial priority. Some municipalities have referred to these as legislative powers. Again, not incorrect. I just don't think it brings the full flavor of what these powers are. Then I have something listed called budget powers. Well, I think Mr. Mayor might disagree with me. He might say, John, that's probably a budget responsibility or duty. Fair enough, and I'll describe that. And then finally, I will gather a whole bunch of disparate parts in the Municipal Act in that part and in one other statute, and just refer to them generally and indicate how they interact with the strong mayor powers. So I will take a break, Mr. Mayor, at the end of each one of these in case there are any questions. I believe there'll probably be a lot of questions with respect to administrative powers and provincial priorities. So let's start with the administrative powers. If you had read the Collingwood Judicial Inquiry Report from, I think, 4 years ago, I think it was November of 2021, Justice Morocco was very clear. No member of council, including the head of council, has any unilateral power to direct staff to do anything unless they've been delegated by council. Well, that's now changed. Section 284.3 specifically and expressly says the mayor, the head of council, has the authority to direct municipal employees. That's the term that's used, municipal employees. That is not a defined term in the statute, who can undertake research and implement the decisions and provide advice, not to council, but to the head of council and the municipality. You might be saying, that sounds familiar. If you're thinking that, it's because it is. There is a provision in Section 228 of the Municipal Act, and that is entitled Municipal Administration. It is one of the responsibilities, one of the obligations of staff, municipal staff, to undertake research and implement the decisions and provide advice to council. So now this has changed. So that authority there, where staff were there to do things for council, now has partially changed. And I say partially because many people will say now the mayor can give direction to anybody. Not necessarily true. the head of council can only exercise the powers to give directions to municipal employees only for the purposes of Part 6.1. Again, I told you the strong mayor powers are encapsulated within that part. So the strong mayor can give direction to staff to do things related to the exercise of the general control and management of the affairs of the municipality and for advancing or not interfering with the prescribed provincial priorities. So the authority here is not to just give advice, in direction to staff to do anything. The power has to be somehow grounded or founded within Part 6.1, which is the strong mayor powers. Now, the mayor cannot do so orally or verbally. It is absolutely clear that all directions given under this specific head of authority must be provided in writing. And there are regulations in Regulation 530/22, where there is some public transparency to this. The direction must be provided to the clerk and members of council so that they are aware of this. And the clerk must post these in a certain way to make it available to the public, subject to MFIPA restrictions. Okay, so direction may be given by the head of council to staff to undertake research, implement decisions, and to do certain things, but only in furtherance of the strong mayor powers. And all of these directions must be in writing. The second power, the one that has received a lot of media attention, is now the authority of the head of council to hire and appoint the municipality's CAO, Chief Administrative Officer. I've actually set out the power right there. I've actually quoted it in 284.5. The powers of a municipality under Section 229 with respect to the CAO are assigned to the head of council. Many persons have misinterpreted and misread this. The powers of a municipality in Section 229 is to appoint a chief administrative officer. It is not to carry out the functions of a chief administrative officer. So my final bullet on the slide is the powers of a municipality in 229 are to appoint a chief administrative officer, or in accordance with the Legislative Act, to revoke the appointment. It does not actually assign the powers of a CAO to the head of council. But now, the one employee that council had, your CAO, Ms. Bunn, is now not the employee, essentially, of council, is the employee of the mayor. Now, that is not an absolutely true statement. I was asked yesterday, does the CAO become the employee directly of the mayor? Well, no. The CAO is still the employee of the municipality, but now the control over the hiring and termination of the CAO is in the mayor's jurisdiction. Okay, so that deals with the CAO. Next is the very broad authority of the head of council to determine the organizational structure of the municipality. And once again, the term is organizational structure. That is not a defined term in the legislation. I consulted with my employment law lawyers, two of them particularly, who work with me to give advice to municipalities. They understand the local government context. They've said to me, well, first of all, John, the term organizational structure is not a term of art that's used typically in employment law matters. Secondly, they said that term is not used in any employment law statute that you would normally consider: the Employment Standards Act, the Labor Relations Act, or the Occupational Health and Safety Act. I wasn't so sure about that. Decided to do a keyword search myself. I looked up those 3 statutes. The words organizational structure is not in there. So in consultation with them, I said, what's your thinking about why this term was chosen? They said probably because it hasn't been used anywhere else and for potentially maximum flexibility. That was my determination as well. I think the province chose this on purpose, deliberately, to give a broad connotation to that. I don't know. What's an organizational structure? I don't know. I'd have to ask the HR director of a municipality. Typically, what you would think of is organizational structure is like an organization chart. Who reports to whom? What do they report? What are their realms of authority and jurisdiction? Who reports to them? I think that's what an organizational structure is. The mayor now can determine the organizational structure, can tear down the existing organizational structure and determine something else for the municipality. Now, as part of that general power to determine the organizational structure, the province has said what that includes is the mayor's power to hire and terminate the employment of division heads or persons who are the heads of divisions. Now, I've written here department because that makes some more sense to me, but the actual language of the statute is division heads. Once again, that term is not defined in the statute, and we don't know specifically what it means. Probably, again, chosen for maximum flexibility. Now, while the mayor has the authority to reestablish the organizational structure, and with it, the authority to possibly hire and terminate certain division heads, that authority to hire and terminate does not include the power to remove or retain or appoint any statutory officers that are listed in subsection 3 of that section. That includes the ones that you would normally think of: the clerk, the treasurer, their deputies, the fire chief, auditor, chief building official, and so on. There's a list of, I think, 10 statutory officers. There is then a basket clause that says, or any other officers required to be appointed under any other act, under this act or any other act, actually. So that would include, for instance, building inspectors who are required to be appointed by council under the Building Code Act. Weed control officers under Section 9, I think, of the Weeds Control Act. Bylaw enforcement officers under, I think, the Provincial Offences Act. Those persons cannot be removed or engaged, hired by the head of council. There are transition provisions, and any organizational structure that remains in place that was in place on May the 1st continues to remain in place unless it's changed by the head of council. So there are significant powers here for the head of council to do certain things. There is another transition provision that says that any division head remains employed unless that person is removed by the head of council. But I've been asked this: can the head of council dismiss a division head that's not a statutory officer without cause? The answer is unequivocally, absolutely yes. However, can the head of council remove a division head with impunity? And the answer is no. The reason is any division head remains employed and has vested with them any common law entitlements or rights, benefits, or privileges. So just think about a long-term employee that you've had at the municipality who's not a statutory officer, but who is a division head, perhaps the manager of bylaw enforcement, the director of planning, making this up, the head of legal, right? If any of those persons are in place, they will have those vested rights. So for instance, if they were to be dismissed without cause, that would carry with it their the obligation of the employer to provide notice, severance, and in some instances also damages. That remains in place. So while a head of council can remove a division head without cause, can't do so without other consequences. And for instance, paying severance, providing notice, and potentially damages. So that's the organizational structure. Then there are two powers that I've classified as administrative, but I've heard some municipalities refer to these as political powers. There are powers relating to prescribed local boards and prescribed committees. With respect to prescribed local boards, the head of council has the authority to appoint the chairs and vice chairs. But let me tell you, this is an empty shell of a power because there are no prescribed local boards set out in the regulation. You'll keep hearing these words, prescribed. What it means is if the statute refers to prescribed, it means it must be in a regulation made under that statute. There are no local boards that have been prescribed. With respect to committees, the prescribed committees, there is an actual definition of prescribed committee. Hallelujah! Under Section 4 of OReg 53022, prescribed committees are defined as committees consisting solely of members of council. Normally what you think of as committees of council. Those committees of council, the head of council has the authority to establish those committees or dissolve them, to assign their functions, their terms of reference, and to appoint the chairs and vice chairs of those committees. Once again, it only applies to committees that are comprised of all members of council. It wouldn't apply to any of your advisory committees that may be committees under the Municipal Act, but that are not consisting solely of members of council. It consists of members of council and members of the public, or potentially just members of the public. So those are the administrative, or as you will, potentially political powers that are granted under these provisions. Before I turn to the other powers, I want to tell you that you do have the authority as the head of council to delegate these powers back. The head of council retains an authority under section 284.13 to delegate a number of the administrative powers that I've just shown you. With respect to the chief administrative officer, the head of council can delegate that authority to appoint and terminate back to council. With respect to the organizational structure and those employment law authorities there, the head of council can delegate this back to council or to the CAO. With respect to local boards, just remember there are none, so there is no delegation yet that can take place. And with respect to prescribed committees, committees comprising of all members of council, the mayor, the head of council, can delegate those authorities back, but only to council, not to anyone else. Those delegations will be done in accordance with the rules set out in the general delegation powers that are set out in the Municipal Act in section 23.1. Sub 2. There are certain rules there. I won't read them all, but the questions that I've been asked is, the mayor may be comfortable now with the council, may feel a great working relationship with the council, a lot of trust, a lot of loyalty. The mayor may today say, oh, I feel comfortable delegating some of these authorities back to council. So what happens? There might be an election. There will be an election in 15, 16 months from now, right? What happens if there's a change of council? One, will the strong mayor delegations run with, will they continue to run? The answer is yes. But can someone change them? Absolutely yes. So if there's a change in the office of mayor in the next election, the new mayor can take back or revoke the delegation that the current mayor has made. Or conversely, let's say the mayor has not delegated any of these powers. The new head of council, if there is one, can make a decision at that point to, I want to delegate, and then the rules change. So I would say if there's going to be any consideration of delegation, then you just pay attention to the rules in 23.1 because there are some interesting things in there. So the mayor can delegate one day but revoke the next. Okay, so Mr. Mayor, I've come to the end of the administrative powers, the first category of powers. I'm wondering if any members of council or you have any questions at this point.
No doubt there will be some questions around this one. Perhaps we start with Councillor McDonald.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just want to mention that in the handout, which I appreciate very much, we do not have this slide. Our slide 23 is provincial priorities. And I think
Yes.
it's very important.
Sorry, Councilor McDonald, I apologize for interrupting. I moved it up for the presentation. I found that I often would talk about the administrative powers and then leave it much later to say that they couldn't be delegated, and I think that was a mistake. So you received an earlier version. The one I'm showing you on the screen, I updated this morning as I was thinking about this.
Okay. Doesn't take much to confuse me. Thank you for that clarification. Just clarification on the administrative powers to appoint the chief administrative officer. We just, one of our first responsibilities when we were elected as council members as a whole was we went through an interview process. So this administrative powers, then the mayor could just say, this is who we're hiring. We wouldn't even have the opportunity to talk about who we would have administer our municipality. Is that what I'm understanding?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor McDonald, your understanding is correct, and that has happened in a number of municipalities. I don't need to name them. You probably are well aware of them, where, yes, the mayor said, you're out and this person is in. There is no requirement for the head of council to confer with anyone, including the manager or director of human resources on this.
Thank you. This leads to the very last question that I was going to ask you. And maybe you can just touch upon it through the balance of the presentation or save the answer to the very end. So if these powers that continue to be explained to us, what is the need of having a council then, councillors? Why is that? If we can just be not consulted and don't work as a team, I have trouble digesting any sane reason for this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor McDonald, I think that's a question that many members of council have been asking about this. Again, this was not set out before the elections. The strong mayor powers came in after the municipal election, so it was at least the large dissemination of the powers was given after the municipal elections in 2022. So I think a lot of council members would have said, you know, if I knew that the head of council would have supremacy in all these areas now, why did I even bother to run? It is a good question, and I think it's one of these philosophical questions that many people have been asking. I'll try to be very even about what I'm going to say today about this. I'm here to tell you about the powers. I don't know that you necessarily want to hear my own personal views, but they may have come out at certain points. So I'll just decline to say whether it's a good or bad thing. I think that's really a policy decision that you as members of council can form for yourself.
Thank you. And I have one request to the mayor. Could we have a bio break, please?
Certainly. So why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll return, and there'll probably be more, I'm sure there'll be more questions for you, John. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just quickly before you go, am I moving at an okay pace for you? I don't want to go too fast, but I also don't want to go too slow. Is this okay?
Seems good. Council, all good? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information to digest, and
Yeah.
you've become adept at conveying it now on your traveling road shows. So I think you're doing great.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Oh, welcome back, everybody. So thanks for the brief indulgence, John. So we were in the Q&A session on administrative powers, and who's next? Deputy Mayor Prost, your just put your little virtual yellow hand up if you wouldn't mind. See if pop to the top for me, so I don't miss you at all. Okay, I've got a couple comments on the delegation. So I expect that I think there's a draft coming shortly with regards to delegation of 284.6 organizational structure to delegate that back to the CAO where it lives now, or I mean, I guess it stopped living as of May 1st. But my intention is to present that and to pass that and to sign that delegation. But the one caveat I wanted to point out, and I think John already touched on it, these delegations are symbolic. I mean, I'll do it because it's part of, you know, my stance on this. But, you know, John mentioned it. I can delegate it today and de-delegate it tomorrow. So in delegation, you don't actually lose your powers or authority. You're just extending them to someone else to use them. So some, you know, I've seen a lot of media where there's a big deal made about the delegation. You're not giving away the powers. You can't give them away. So my main communication, and I put out a sort of a statement about this on May 1st, as these came out from watching John's presentations with other municipalities. That's where I've been kind of learning as I went. I am just going to read what I put out publicly, just so it's on the record. I mean, it's on my website, but the header was, you know, what does strong mayor powers mean for Midland? And from my perspective, as your mayor this term, it means status quo. And I put this all in print, so it's all out there. I'm proud to work with the council who, for the past 2 years, have been aligned in supporting provincial priorities like housing, transit, roads, and utilities, and servicing our community to support responsible growth and economic prosperity that follows that growth. We have an excellent senior team of municipal professional staff, led by our CIO, Rhonda Bunn, and a workforce dedicated to serving Midland residents. I believe the best decisions are made in collaboration with council, town staff, and the community, and that will not change as long as I have anything to say about it. However, any use of these new powers requires notice, as we're learning, written justification, and public disclosure. So you will all have the ability to judge the use and perceived need if and when these powers are ever used in our municipality by either myself or future mayors. And the next caveat is, you know, will I ever need to use this new set of tools bestowed upon me? Based on the team we have this term, I don't believe I will. Quite frankly, our CIO is in place to oversee the operational side of our municipality and to be the bridge between operations and council governance. Our CIO has the faith of both myself and our council, you know, who picked her, to continue her mission of achieving our goals and objectives, and has been a really valuable addition to our team this term. There are checks and balances in place. Some would argue they're not enough. to try and rein in any rogue strong mayors who choose to rule by decree rather than by consensus. I don't foresee any immediate need to exercise these new powers with the council that our municipality has built in the 2022 election. I believe that our town elected a really good team, and even when faced with the tragic loss of two of your originally elected representatives, I believe we've, as a council, have done our best to fill the vacancies with councillors who support our strategic goals and the election promises to our community. So that's what I've committed to. I put that out on May 1 before having the benefit of this meeting with you today, but I just wanted to reiterate it and restate it. So my intention is to sign delegated authority back to the CAO for 284.6. I'm not sure if that happens today at this meeting or if I just do it in my office. I'm not going to do the Trump thing with the big signature, but that's going to happen. I commit to well publicly. And just a reminder that delegated authority, it never removes or transfers the authorities from the strong mayor in any municipality. That's much more than a statement than a question, John, but it's based on the wisdom that you've imparted thus far and that I've seen you, and you likely will impart to our council shortly, that I've seen you impart to other councils. So just wanted to put that on the record. Council, any other questions about the administrative side of this? Councilor Meredith.
Thank you, Mayor Gordon, through you to John. In the local boards under D, 284.7, just for clarification, does this mean that under the strong mayor powers, would this be open season, so to speak, on the local boards in this section? And then for the committees, which is E, to my understanding, that is a committee of all council, all elected officials on this committee, or is that just comprised of one council member on a committee? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Merides. So the authorities, and I put them on the screen now, the authorities with respect to local boards and committees only relate to prescribed local boards. So your question is it open season? Well, no. Right now, there are no prescribed local boards. So there's no authority now. The province could, the minister can come in and say, yeah, I want to include the public library board. I want to include the police service board, the board of health. Could do that if it was deemed within their discretion to do. So it is possible that there could be prescribed local boards to those or any other ones that the minister chooses to list, but at the moment there are none listed. By the way, if you were going to ask Councillor Murray, this is not unusual. Sometimes the province just says there is regulation making authority to cabinet or to the minister, and then that authority is just never exercised, but there may be authority there. So right now there are no local boards. With respect to committees, there are prescribed committees, and as I've indicated, there's a definition of what that is in section 4 of OREG 53022, and it says prescribed committees means committees comprised of only members of council. So that means that your council has 9 members. The committee would have to be comprised of 9 members, and they would have to be all members of council to be a prescribed committee under the regulation.
Thank you.
So technically, that would be our committee of the whole, which we use. And I guess I'd have a sidebar question is, some municipalities run a committee of the whole meeting, and then at the next meeting is the council, and then committee of the whole. We condense it all into one, and we kind of break out from council into committee of the whole and then resolve back into council. I don't know if that's a formality or, if that makes sense. Maybe we revisit and get rid of committee of the whole. If it's not serving any purpose other than just being a placeholder. But we used to have a planning and development committee, and I can't remember when that was dissolved. That was just dissolved, with consent of council. at the time. And that used to be a separate meeting, a planning meeting that all of council would attend. And all you talk about is planning applications. Before that, a lot of that stuff got delegated to our growth and planning team. That was a couple council terms ago. So I don't think there, other than committee of the whole, I don't think there's anything else, unless, collectively, and I would say collectively, we dream up the need for another venue to meet as a body to talk about specific things that we think aren't appropriate to talk about at a council or committee of the whole. Then I guess with these powers, I could, wand it into existence. But again, no plans to do that right now, and certainly don't plan on ruling by decree. One other thing, John, and I mentioned this in our little micro session. My real concern about these powers aren't about me and how I may use them. It's more about what's going to happen in the next election. I think, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I probably am not. I think we're going to see a lot more people running for mayor positions in our province, in strong mayor municipalities, that may be looking to who maybe really want to take advantage of these new powers to rule by decree, to come in and, burn down the place, fire the CAO, can all the department heads, put in their own buddies and friends or people that they've worked with in other places, and do that all unilaterally. And there'll be nothing to stop them. And unfortunately, you have to take their word when they're knocking at the door, asking for your vote. If you say, hey, are you going to, rule like a dictator with these new powers? Oh, no, sir, I won't. Please vote for me. And then they get voted in, and next thing you know, it's a house cleaning and all the costs that come with that, because there are significant costs to just mass dismissals of senior people. So this is my fear, is that it is open to abuse and misuse by people who are attracted to this. None of us campaigned or, were elected knowing these powers were coming, but that's a whole new ballgame in the election that's coming in 2026. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of vitriol and rhetoric and rage farming, precedes that election during the campaign period for the people vying for this office, the mayor's office, just because of the power that's bestowed upon them. So that's my cautionary tale, and my one real concern is less about me in this council, but about the next council, if I'm here or if I'm not, and the kind of folks that are lining up to do this job. So I just wanted to really say that for the folks that are watching this, that it's not lost on me. Any other questions for the administrative side? Oh, Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Worship. So this is just a statement I'd like to make. The Ontario government could have used a better term, like coined a better term, because strong mayor powers did have a psychological effect on a lot of councillors. It didn't have an effect on me, but the word strong and mayor and powers, like it doesn't reflect well. It could have been coined like mayor-led government or governance. Also, just for, I guess, general municipalities, if we have a better understanding of, strong mayor powers, and people actually try to understand if anybody's running for, whoever's running for mayor next election, that understand what the mayor's about, and, have a better voter base, then we wouldn't have to worry about abuse of strong mayor powers with the wrong person lining up to get the job to abuse those powers. Thank you.
Looks like all the questions or statements, John, it really does open up an opportunity for people to really lay it out where they stand on this. And I think that's a good opportunity. So please carry on, unless you have any color to add.
No, Mr. Mayor, but we did talk when we had met earlier, and I think you did ask the question, did I see a change coming for the next election? I said, yes, you're going to have a number of very hotly contested mayoralty races. And I think, unfortunately, you're going to have probably maybe a lot more disinterest in being a member of council for maybe some of the reasons that Councillor McDonald pointed out before. Why should I run if this is what you know, I'm weakened in my position to make big decisions as a member of council. So I think that may be coming up. I also want to, and I've been saying this to many mayors, you know, just be careful with these powers, because whether you exercise them or don't exercise them, you're going to be criticized either way. And you're basically, strong mayors are now going to have a target on their back. Anyone who is going to be looking to accede to that position will basically argue, you didn't use the powers, you should have used the powers, and you're you know, you remained a weak mayor. If you then use the powers, you're going to be criticized for having used the powers and creating an undemocratic state of affairs at the municipality. So I think there's going to be a lot of mayors with targets on their back because of the strong mayor powers, which then leads to exactly what you were saying, Mr. Mayor, is what kind of people are going to be running for office next term? Are they going to be the people that you really want to be running for office, or are they going to be, you know, a carbon copy of maybe what you saw happen in the United States presidential election? So it's, my view, it's a pretty sad state of affairs. Mr. Mayor, if I can't carry on now that I've done my op-ed, I was now going to move to the 3 prescribed provincial priority powers that are the next grouping of powers. Here is the regulation on provincial priority powers. It relates to building 1.5 million new residential units in Ontario by the end of December of 2023, and constructing and maintaining infrastructure to support housing. Right? And look at the front part. The following provincial priorities relate to 3 sections of the Municipal Act, and I'll go through each one. So again, these powers can only be used for prescribed provincial priorities, which is housing and construction of infrastructure to support housing. Meetings. As you know, every municipality must have a procedure bylaw that sets out a number of things. One of them is, what are the rules for procedure at a meeting? Well, now the head of council can override the procedure bylaw when the head of council forms the opinion that there is a potential advancement of the provincial priorities for council to consider a matter. The mayor can now say, I don't care what the procedure bylaw says about new business or notice of motion. I'm going to say we need to bring this forward to council for council to consider this matter. And if it is a matter that the mayor envisages that there is a potential advancement, the mayor can do so, notwithstanding what the procedure bylaw says, okay? So this is to advance a matter that the mayor is of the opinion potentially advances provincial priorities. That's a mouthful. So one is, it's the mayor's opinion. 2, it may potentially, not will, potentially advance for a provincial priority. So you got to put all those things together. The second one is the one that probably got a lot of notoriety, which is the veto power. So the head of council of a designated municipality can veto a bylaw under the Municipal Act, under the Planning Act, or under any prescribed statute. And there's only one prescribed statute at the moment, and it's Section 2 of the Development Charges Act, which is a development charge bylaw. If the head, again, is of the opinion that any of those bylaws, under the Municipal Act, Planning Act, or Development Charge bylaw, potentially interfere with the provincial priority, the mayor can exercise their power to veto the bylaw. Okay, couple of things on this. Does it have to be the entire bylaw? No. I think it can be only part of a bylaw. I'll give you one example. Let's say the council is passing a development charge bylaw, and there are certain rates, charges set out for residential development. The higher the rate, potentially the mayor can see that and say, that's a disincentive to building houses. Okay. The mayor can veto potentially only the residential development charge rate that's in the bylaw. Doesn't have to veto the entire bylaw. And the same holds true for any other of the bylaws passed under the Municipal Act or the Planning Act. Okay. Now, this only relates to recent bylaws. Why do I say that? The mayor cannot go back and veto a bylaw that was passed 6 months ago, a year ago, or in fact, just a couple of weeks ago. Why? Well, the requirements under the regulations say if the mayor would like to veto a bylaw, can only do so if it provides notice to council within 2 days of council having voted for that bylaw. Okay, that's why I say it's a recent bylaw. You can't go back historically. So these are only for new bylaws coming forward. The mayor has 2 days to give notice that he may exercise the power of veto. The veto then must be exercised within 14 days of the original council meeting. So the mayor has 2 weeks, provided that notice was given, in order to actually set out the veto. And the veto must state why the mayor is vetoing the bylaw. So let me give it away. The mayor has to state why it potentially, in his opinion, interferes with the provincial priority. That's what the supporting reasons would state. Now, what's really interesting is council can override the mayor's veto. Yes, it's there. You can have a veto of a veto. Council can only do so with a 2/3 vote of council. And when I say 2/3 vote of council, what I mean is 2/3 of all of the members of council. Your council is comprised of 9 members. You must have 2/3, 6 members, to overturn the mayor's veto. However, what's quorum for your council? It can be as minimal as 5. A majority of the members of council under Section 238 of the Municipal Act creates quorum. So you could have 5 members of council and you can have a meeting, and yet at that meeting you could not vote to overturn the mayor's veto because you only have 5 members there. You need at least 6, 2/3 of your council. It's not the members of council who are present. If the legislative drafters had wanted to say that, and they do say that in other areas, they could have said that. They don't. So it's all members of council. The mayor is entitled to vote on the veto, the override of the veto. And can only, the veto of the mayor's veto, the override, can only be done within 21 days of the date that the clerk provides the notice of the mayor's veto. Okay, so lots of regulatory requirements. I know your clerk's head is spinning. There's lots of things to keep track of. So there is the mayor's entitlement to veto a council bylaw if the mayor forms the opinion that there is an interference with provincial priorities, and council can veto the mayor's veto, but must do so with a supermajority vote of 2/3 of council. Okay. Now the final provincial prescribed provincial priority power relates to the bylaw enactment power. This is the one that was added by Bill 39. Again, notwithstanding what the procedure bylaw may say, if the mayor forms the opinion that a bylaw under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, or a development charge bylaw potentially interferes with the provision of housing or infrastructure related to housing, the mayor can bring forward the bylaw to council with supporting reasons as to why, in his opinion, it advances a provincial priority, and require council to vote. So there's a whole bunch of things here. The mayor forms the opinion that there's a potential advancement, can advance the bylaw, and require council to vote on it, but must provide reasons. And then the vote is, the bylaw can be passed with more than 1/3 of a vote of council. So in your municipality, this would be determined by take a third of council. 3 out of 9 members of council is a third. The language in the statute says more than 1/3. The mayor is entitled to vote. So the mayor would need to get a support of 3 persons, presuming that the mayor is going to vote in favor of the very bylaw that he advanced. You would need 4 persons on the vote. For councils that are 7 or 8 members, you would only need a majority of 3 members in each of those councils, because you would take a fractional 1/3 of 7 is 2 1/3. A fraction of 8 would be 1/3 would be 2 2/3. Add the mayor and you would have more than 1/3. That doesn't work that way in your municipality because 1/3 is 3. You would need more than 1/3. So you add the mayor, you'd need 4 votes on your council. Okay? Those are the provincial priority powers. They can only be exercised to either advance a provincial priority, housing or infrastructure related to housing, or vetoing this a bylaw, a recently enacted bylaw, because it doesn't advance a provincial priority, which is what's on the screen. So, Mr. Mayor, that's the end of provincial priorities. I'm going to stand down and ask if there are any questions.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you again. Just clarification on the veto. Is it only applied to bylaws? Or this section of your presentation was only clarifying which bylaws?
Yes, so it would only apply to bylaws that are enacted under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, or a development charge bylaw. Those are the only bylaws that can be vetoed. And they can only be vetoed if there's a potential interference with a provincial priority. And as I said, they have to be a recent bylaw because the mayor only has the entitlement to do so if he gives notice within 2 days of the vote having occurred.
Thank you.
And of course, the workaround on this 2-day thing, I've been playing rollies in my head trying to figure out what this means, is if the veto, if it's too late, if it's something that we passed, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, instead of the veto, the strong mayor could just bring in and a completely new overriding bylaw. Forget about needing 2/3 to revisit, right? Because you throw the procedure bylaw out the window and compel council to vote on the new version of it. So, and of course, I would need. This is all hypothetical, of course, but I would need to have 300 votes then to basically have a do-over of something. So there's. It's crafted in such a way where it looks like there's some protections, but there's every time I see that, I then see, oh, well, there's another way to do it. So we're going to start to see this play out, I think, over the next remaining year and a half or so in other municipalities. Again, I don't anticipate this being needed here, but it's going to be really interesting and perhaps even chilling to watch how this plays out elsewhere, where there's more dysfunction.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can say I've been asked by a couple municipalities, how broad are these powers? And that's the key question that we don't have. I'll say this to council: we don't have any judicial decisions. The authorities now have been in place. By the way, the strong mayor powers were put in place by those statutes and those regulations. Those haven't changed at all. They've remained exactly as they were when they were first enacted, except for the longer list of municipalities that have been added. But nothing has changed. And yet, there's been no judicial decision on any of these powers. And so the scope of what they may be remains to be seen. So one of the questions that I was asked is, so the mayor has provincial priority powers. Does he have ancillary or accessory powers there too? Which is an interesting question, because if you think about the interpretation of municipal powers, going back to Dillon's rule, the rule was, as a creature of statute, a municipality's council can only do the things that it's been expressly authorized to do, or that is accessory or ancillary and can be implied from the express powers. Does it work the same way with strong mayor powers? That's a really interesting question. I think my answer is yes. And the reason I say so is if you look at Section 8.1 of the Municipal Act, it says all of the powers in the statute are to be given a broad interpretation in order to allow a municipality to do what it would like to do and feels it's necessary. I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing it. So when I read that, I go, I think some of these powers will probably be given a broad interpretation. How broad? We don't know yet, but it could be quite broad. And Mr. Mayor, you have, I think you did at the meeting point out the workaround, and a number of other mayors have said this as well. They go, well, for instance, I'm unhappy that we can't have construction at our municipality 24/7 because we really need affordable housing and we really need it to be done. So I don't like the restrictions in the noise bylaw, but I can't go back and veto those restrictions that allow quiet periods on holidays, weekends, overnight. But then the mayor says, I can't veto the bylaw because it was passed a couple of years ago, but I can bring forward an amendment to that bylaw that says I want to advance provincial priorities because I do want to have construction occurring more frequently at my municipality. I don't want them to be just limited, noise and vibration not happening between, say, 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. I want it to be 24/7. That is potentially something that the mayor can do and can bring forward the bylaw with only more than 1/3 of a vote. So that's just one example of what you had referred to, Mr. Mayor, as a workaround using a noise bylaw, which is probably something that maybe someone wouldn't normally turn to and go, how does that advance a provincial priority? So that's one example that I've come up with. Any other questions?
Looks like we're good to carry on.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn to the budget power, or Mayor Gordon, you may correct me. You might say it's a budget responsibility or duty. I'd say well said. It is now the head of council's responsibility to prepare a proposed budget for the municipality and must do so on or before February 1st. This doesn't mean that the mayor has to wait to that date, but the mayor can wait to the date. Now, earlier I showed you the delegation authorities. It doesn't specify that the mayor can delegate the budget responsibility. Statutory Interpretation 101 would say, if the legislation is clear and it says you can do this and it sets out certain things that you can do, then, and it excludes others by omission, it means that the legislator decided to give certain authorities and not give the powers in other instances. So my reading is the only delegations that can take place under the statute are with respect to what's on the screen. When you get to the budget authority, there is no ability for the mayor to delegate that. However, if the mayor does not bring forward the budget and propose it to council by February 1st, effectively, the mayor forfeits the ability to do so, and then it goes to council, and the legislation says then council shall prepare and adopt the budget. So no delegated authority here. However, the mayor can give direction to staff under the original authority 284.3 to have staff bring forward a budget, which will be the mayor's budget, but to bring forward the budget and to do so in a way that the mayor would like it to be done. For instance, no one else shall be consulted. Or, going the other extreme, just do it in the way that we have traditionally or historically done it at this municipality. Create a budget committee and bring it forward with public notice, public hearings, or public consultation. And then the only change there is that at the end, instead of it coming to council, it is the mayor who brings it forward and proposes it to council. Council may adopt it, which is great, or propose amendments to the budget. And if council proposes amendments, the mayor could accept it or could veto any of the council's amendments. Now, if the council doesn't like the vetoing, council could override the mayor's veto, but again, by a 2/3 vote. I was asked this question yesterday, and I thought it was interesting, and I said, no guidance on this. So the mayor brings forward the budget, council proposes some amendments. The mayor, instead of proposing vetoing the amendments, can the mayor propose his own different amendments? And I said to the municipality that asked me, the treasurer, I said, the statute doesn't speak to that. It doesn't go to that level of detail. But you would think that if the mayor has the right to veto an amendment, perhaps as part of his authority, might say, instead of vetoing, maybe I'll propose an amendment here. But then I would think that the council would have the ability and the 30-day time period that is set out in the regulation in which to say, we still don't agree with the mayor's amendment and we're still going to propose amendments. So I think that's the way it might work. But again, the legislation doesn't go to that level of detail, and I'm reading what has been put forward and trying to put a reasonable, fair system in place to this. So I think the mayor might be able to propose amendments to council's amendments, but then that would trigger council being able to do something. Otherwise, the mayor could propose those amendments and then they'd be done. And I don't think that's what the legislation actually says right now. So that is the budget power, duty, or responsibility. I'll take any questions on this aspect, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor McDonald.
Thank you. I don't know how giving the budget power to the mayor is in support of the provincial initiatives. How is that supporting the provincial priorities? And again, it begs the question, why have councillors? If he can just propose the budget and that's it. It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, so I'll try to answer that, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor McDonald. So remember I said that there were 3 specific authorities that related to provincial priorities, and I had spoken that this is a standalone power that the mayor now has. And you're right. one of the most important decisions that council has to make is the preparation and adoption of the budget, which then sets the assessments and the tax rates and all of that, right? That's now been wrenched away. And even though it comes within the strong mayor powers are supposed to overall be supportive of the provincial initiatives, this power here, just like the administrative powers that I showed you in the first part of today's presentation, do not relate specifically and exclusively only to the provincial priorities. However, Councillor McDonald, I understand your comment, and I understand what you're saying about it. But I just want to be very clear: the budget power itself doesn't have to expressly relate back to the provincial priorities.
Thank you.
This is a wild one too, because as you know, when you run for office, you pay your fee at the desk, you get a few signatures. Most people don't ask for your CV or your work experience or if you can balance a checkbook. And yet, you know, here we are in charge of what's collectively $100 million budget. So, you know, with this, you could get a mayor who decides, you know what, I'm going to hold our budget increases at 0% or -2% and just nosedive your municipality into the ground. You know, it sounds good at the door knocking, you know, hold the line, 0%. I even thought like that, you know, last term early on before, you know, I learned the realities. And it's completely unrealistic. So proposing this, again, my statement earlier, what changes this term for the, you know, our next budget, which will be our last one before the election, to me, it's status quo. I mean, in name, yeah, it's going to be the mayor's budget when it ultimately gets presented to us for final adoption. But how we arrive at it is going to be the same collective process that, in my opinion anyway, that we've always done. So the only extra steps is some of the budget committee meetings that the CAO has with department heads as she gets really close to the refinement of what that final thing looks like. Up to now, I have never been part of those meetings. I may out of interest to see where we're at, so I'm not getting the news at the same time as the rest of you. I'd like to know where we're at. This time I did get a sneak peek because, you know, we've always been trying to do our budget increases at or below the rate of inflation. The municipal side of it, right? Then you layer on library, airport, you know, police, all that other stuff that we don't have any control over. But the municipal side, you know, when we came in at 2.1, like I said, I was doing a happy dance that we finally be able to hit an increase at or below the rate of inflation. So council's direction on what our target is going to be for this year, that will be given to staff. I don't see anything changing in the process other than at some point it's going to say it's the mayor's budget coming forward, but we will have gotten through that budget process exactly the same as our previous budgets, in my opinion. I don't see any reason for that to change. The rationale for this escapes me too, but it is what it is. I can't say no to it. And my only assurance is to you and those watching online is that we will continue to work collaboratively and put together a responsible budget, do our best. We'll have our agreements and disagreements and at this horseshoe and whittle it down to what we can collectively agree on. And ultimately that'll be presented as the mayor's budget, which you have all had all your input on, and we'll approve it, much like we've done before. And this year we're doing it early, right? February 1st might have been tight in previous years, but this year we're getting started, you know, and have her nailed down before the you know, the calendar flips for 2026. So that's my little preamble on this. I don't see this materially changing anything this term, but again, a cautionary tale. You know, a new mayor with enough like-minded people where a veto won't pass could, you know, absolutely nosedive municipalities' finances into the ground. Because none of us were elected for our financial prowess. It's usually the best talkers and it's a popularity contest. That's just how politics works, right? So I'm not trying to diminish anybody here, especially myself, but that is the reality.
Mr. Mayor, then, if there's no more questions, I will then now try to wrap it up by just talking about those miscellaneous provisions in the statute. The first one is an unfortunately referenced named clause, which is immunity. And I think some people have misinterpreted this and go, there's immunity. You can't challenge the mayor's authority to do certain things, and that's not true. I've parsed some of the words and I've paraphrased it for you here. So it's not a full immunity. It says any decision made or veto power or other power that is exercised legally and in good faith shall not be quashed or open for review in whole or in part. So the mayor still has to act legally and must act in good faith. Those can still be challenged. They can be subject to an application to quash, judicial review, and in the one that I've seen out in the city of Peterborough, there's been one challenge to the strong mayor powers, and the city was kind enough to send me a copy of the application. It's not an application to quash or a judicial review, which is fascinating. It's an application under the rules for the interpretation of it, which is interesting to say the least. Now, I've cited at the bottom, I've sections 272 and 273 of the Municipal Act, where I think this immunity section came from. Now, 272 says a bylaw cannot be challenged for its unreasonableness or supposed unreasonableness, okay? And 273 says someone can bring a challenge, an application to quash to the court within 1 year of a bylaw being enacted for illegality, and bad faith is an element of illegality. So I think what they've done is they mushed these provisions together. I was asked the other day, what if a mayor advances a zoning bylaw at council and says it's to advance the provincial priorities and gets it enacted by more than 1/3? Does this mean that someone has lost their right to appeal to the Ontario Lands Tribunal? And my answer is no. And I think the language that was chosen here was very clear. You can't challenge it if it was passed legally and in good faith by quashing it or making it open for review. So my interpretation is quashing is an application to quash to the courts. Open to review is a judicial review to the court. I don't believe it was intended to capture an appeal. The word appeal is not used here, to an administrative tribunal, whether it's to the Assessment Review Board, the Environmental Review Board, or the OLT. So that's my interpretation of the immunity section. So the mayor, if they act illegally or act in bad faith, it can be challenged. The head of council in a strong mayor municipality cannot be appointed. As you know, when there's a declaration of vacancy of an office, typically for one of the things in section 258 or disqualification, the council has a decision to make within 60 days. Do we run a by-election to fill the vacancy, or do we just appoint someone? And that holds true for the head of council. Well, this has changed for those municipalities that have been designated as strong mayor municipalities. The strong mayor vacancy of office can only be filled by a by-election. Council can no longer appoint the strong mayor. And in your municipality, you have a deputy mayor. The deputy mayor does not have the powers of the strong mayor, even if she is acting in place of the mayor when he is absent. Or if you were to have an acting or an interim mayor, those persons would not have the authority of the mayor. Only a mayor who is elected to office after the date of May the 1st will have the strong mayor powers. And a mayor who is acclaimed is elected, because Section 38 of the Municipal Elections Act says elected by acclamation. So that person would be elected to office. So only an elected strong mayor can exercise the powers. All of the powers that the mayor exercises, whether it's a veto, giving directions, or making a mayoral decision, all of those have to be in writing, okay? The mayor has to produce a written record by the next business day, provided to each member of council and the clerk, and it has to be made available to the public, subject to any MFIPA requirements. Okay. When directing employees under the direction portion and under 284.3, the head of council must provide that direction in writing to the clerk and to the CAO. To date, my experience has been, and your clerk probably is more familiar about this than I am, most written records have taken the form of what looks like some type of and excuse the pejorative connotation, but like an executive order. It's been relatively brief. Typically, there's a quick heading, a title, short title. There is a reference to the statutory authority to do so, and sometimes the regulatory authority. There is sometimes whereas clauses, recitals to give a grounding as to why it's happening, what the authority may be emanating from. And then there are typically short numbered paragraphs, if there's not only one paragraph. That's how I've normally seen them. So I refer to them as executive order types of formats. And finally, as you know, any member of council who has a pecuniary interest in any matter, whether it's direct, indirect, or deemed, you are required under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act to not participate in the decision-making authority. Now, for years, for 45 years, 46 years, the only pecuniary interest that could arise was at a meeting. So at the meeting, a member is required to disclose their pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof at the meeting. There were additions made to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act in 2018. All of a sudden, there was no longer the requirement only for a member to be wary of pecuniary interest at council meetings or at committee meetings. It could be also an interest where the member was speaking to municipal staff who had the delegated or were empowered to make decisions or recommendations. The member, again, couldn't use the influence of their office to attempt to influence the staff member. So now with strong mayor powers, you have to be aware of those. And if the mayor has a pecuniary interest in any matter, can't exercise the strong mayor powers. And as soon as the mayor becomes aware that they might have a potential pecuniary interest, must file a written statement under Section 5.1 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act with the clerk. And then, as I've set out in the new section 5.3b, mayor cannot use the power or exercise any duty with respect to the matter. So this just is a new section that heads of council must pay attention to under the statute. So you have to be very careful about this, because a lot of times the mayor's strong mayor powers is not just exercised at a council meeting anymore. Just think of the veto power or the direction power. Those are not done at meetings. They could be done at meetings, but they're not. They don't exclusively have to be done at meetings. So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I've come to the end. My wrap-up conclusions are: you now have strong mayor powers. They're in place at your municipality. You cannot disclaim them, and the mayor can. With the caveats that we've spoken about, Mayor Gordon indicated, and I've pointed out as well, that while the mayor can delegate certain authorities, always retains those authorities and can revoke them at any time, whether it's the mayor that delegated them or whether it's a future mayor. There are limited executive powers and authorities now for the head of council. However, they are significant. And even though I say they're limited, they have to be done somehow within the confines of Part 6.1. They are very significant. The first ones relate to those powers that I call administrative powers, which relate to the organizational structure, the CAO, and the hiring and firing of certain persons, giving directions to staff, and the authority with prescribed committees to create committees, dissolve committees, give them terms of reference, and to appoint the chairs and vice chairs. Then there are the three powers that are exclusively related only to provincial priorities. The ability of the mayor to advance a provincial priority by requiring that council consider a matter, the veto power of the mayor to veto a bylaw that or part of a bylaw that may interfere with provincial priorities, and then finally, the authority of the mayor to override the procedure bylaw, bring forward a bylaw under the Municipal Act, Planning Act, or Development Charge bylaw that the mayor believes will advance provincial priorities, and require that council be put to a vote on that. And with respect to the last one, advancing provincial priorities, that bylaw may be passed with just more than 1/3 of a vote of council, which is 4 members. There is the budget responsibility and obligations powers. And finally, there are those wrap-up administrative type of things that I've talked about: immunity, the vacancy of office, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and the in-writing requirements. So, Mr. Mayor, I've come to the end of the presentation proper, and perhaps I'll stop sharing my screen at this point, and I'd be happy to take any other questions that council or yourself or anyone may have.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you again. Just in general, are you aware of any formal judicial procedures that are evolving to defend the democratic process that we now experience in opposition to this strong mayor's policy?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor. So let me just say this. As I mentioned at one point, the municipality is a creature of provincial statute. So any attempt, I think, to try to argue that these authorities are not constitutional, I don't think would go very far. Constitutionally, the province can set the rules for municipalities and has decided to shift the democratic landscape in Ontario by putting in strong mayor powers. So I don't, but I mean, I say I don't foresee a constitutional challenge, but I guess there could be one saying basically the whole thing is undemocratic. You'll remember that the City of Toronto attempted to bring forward a constitutional challenge to the province coming in 2018 and deciding to slice City Hall Council pretty much in half. And that had more legs than I ever thought it would, because it actually ended up going to the Supreme Court of Canada, Councillor McDonald. And interestingly enough, the city was able to muster the votes of, or at least the decision of 4 members of the Supreme Court of Canada. It was a fundamentally split council, 5-4. In this case, just going to your question, I am aware of one judicial case that has come forward that I believe the hearing date is June the 10th, and it's in the city of Peterborough. And the allegation is that the mayor illegally used his authority to bring forward a bylaw to allow for some transitional housing development in the municipality. The City of Peterborough Legal Department was very kind. They provided me with a copy of the materials. I must say it's not well put together, in my opinion. It doesn't say much more than the mayor exercised this authority under this provision. The mayor ought not to have exercised that authority. I didn't see very good reasons why it was illegal or in bad faith. I am at least aware through hearing through the grapevine that something may be happening in the city of Orillia with respect to Mayor McIsaac's revocation of the appointment of the CAO, who hadn't quite started but had been announced as being the new CAO. I've heard that there may be a challenge there, or very likely a challenge, but I haven't seen anything. Other than that, Councillor McDonald, I'm not aware of any other judicial proceedings, certainly not of any decisions that have been made, but I'm not aware of any other judicial proceedings that have gone forward.
I appreciate your reply. I just have a final comment, just to state that this Midland Council has a successful history of local governance. And this proposal is a disservice to the very community we represent and to the very voters that put us here. But I'll have to work with it, I guess.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you very much, John. I really appreciate you coming today and enlightening us and sharing the realities of the new world that we've just found ourselves in. And I guess all we can do is plan for the worst and hope for the best. And I think to Councillor McDonald's point, you know, I think the only real way to have this changed or reversed is either through a reversal by the existing provincial government, which I don't particularly see as realistic over the next 4 years, or perhaps it becomes one of the core foundational campaign promises of the election that follows. But in the meantime, I think I can only speak for this municipality. I have the utmost faith in my council here, all of you, and that in the time we have remaining, we're going to do our best to continue to advance those priorities, just as we've already been doing. And I know that even just with emails that trickle in this week, we will see more opportunities to advance those priorities in our community. Short of getting shovels in the ground, that's the frustrating part of all this. We can do everything to play our part, but we can't actually get the home built. But we will do everything in our power. And my objective and goal would be to, this notwithstanding having this tool now in my toolbox, to not have to reach in and ever feel the need that I'm going to need to use it. So that's largely in your hands, because you know how committed I am to housing in our community. Grow, baby, grow. Build, baby, build. But I feel that you're all equally committed, and so I don't really foresee this as being a struggle for the remainder of this term, and we can continue to do amazing things together. So that's about all I can really say to our community and to the team here and to our senior leadership team. And then when these resolutions or what have they are prepared, I'm happy to make that symbolic gesture, because symbolism still counts, to delegate those authorities. I would argue that both of them, the hiring and firing of our CAO, as well as the reorg structure, both of those, I will happily, sign off and delegate back to council for the CAO, and the organizational structure where it sits now with the CAO. So that's about all I can do, because saying no to these things is fluffery. There's no such thing, and I think we've just learned that with today's presentation, and we'll just keep on keeping on. Councillor Patel.
Thank you, John, for the presentation. And like the mayor said, we're working collaboratively in Midland Council. So we shouldn't worry about what's gonna happen in other municipalities of abuse or whatever else could go on, but I'm confident that our council we have that will work collaboratively. And I did order a Timu crown for our mayor, just for the strong mayor power. Thank you.
All right, yeah, I'll give that to the media. I'll do the old, because they're gonna want this one anyway. All in jest. Deputy Mayor.
Sorry about that. I was having trouble finding my hand on here. Even though it's in, it would just be a good gesture. You're giving back your authority to our CAO. You can delegate your strong mayor powers back to council as well. Would you be willing to do that?
There's only certain things that can be delegated, as we've just learned. And
Right.
the two foundational ones that council had control over before May 1st are the only two things I can delegate back. And I'm committed, publicly today to delegating them back to council. But again, just to reiterate, I don't lose those authorities. And if for some reason I felt the need to exercise them, I don't need to ask permission to take them back. I literally just take them back and do them and do it. So my commitment is that I don't have any intention of doing that, but that's why I'm making the point of saying it's a symbolic delegation. It just meant to make people feel better, but it doesn't change the reality, and you're not actually relinquishing the strong mayor powers. They're just saying as a normal course of business, let's keep it the way it has been. But the reality is it isn't the way it has been.
Okay, I appreciate that. But you've also said that you're very happy with your council and we work very well together. There's likely no need for you to use them. I just think it's going to make council staff and the community feel better, knowing that things really aren't going to change. They're still going to work with us. And we're going to be a council, not a one sheriff town, right? Thank you.
Absolutely. And as soon as I have the ability to put pen to paper on those, I will. And you'll all get the notification of it. It'll be a publicly declared thing wherever we keep those on a new page on the site or something. Madam Clerk, I think, has been working diligently to get things set up for this new reality. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Deputy Mayor Prost. I am in the process of preparing a mayoral decision for the mayor to sign that will solidify what he has told everybody at council about delegating the powers back to the CAO. And also the clerk staff, Sarah and I will be working on a website page. So every mayoral decision, direction will be logged on the website. So it will be available to the public. So anything that the mayor, a direction or a decision will be on the website.
Okay, so that will that include, and I know it's symbolic, but giving what he can back to council?
Yeah, so the two sections that were referenced in John's slide, they're the two new ones, the ability to reorganize the structure of the municipality and to hire and fire department heads and whatnot. That traditionally falls in the hands of the CAO. So I will be delegating that authority back to the CAO, and of course, in consultation with council, the CAO makes these reorganizational things, as we know from our in-camera meetings. And the ability to hire and fire our CAO, I will be delegating that back to council because that's how we've done it all this time. But again, the asterisk beside that is that, should I or future mayor decide that, that's not working, then the power remains, even though it's delegated. So my only commitment is I don't foresee the need, based on my current team and our current senior leadership team and our staff, right down to the folks that are the seasonal lawn cutters. I have ultimate faith in that any struggles we have, we'll deal with them collectively, and I don't need to rule by decree. But the reality is it's there. And I don't want to also send the signal that I'm, impotent to this. Like I I will use these if I have to advance the needs of our community. But I don't foresee the need to. And that's my public commitment to you. And I didn't want to sugarcoat it or play it down. So prepared to use them if I have to, but I'm very content to leave them in the drawer. And because I know we're gonna continue to slay the priorities as we have thus far. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. I also forgot to mention that any decision or direction is also going to be circulated to council. So you will be aware of any decision or direction that the mayor does make with respect to the powers. And also, if I may, I'd just like to take the time to thank Mr. Mascaron for joining us today. He's extremely busy. He's been attending a lot of the local municipalities to share his wisdom on these strong mayor powers. And as clerk, yes, there's a lot going on in my head at the moment, but you've really helped clarify and provide a good direction on how to set up the processes and procedures. And I would just like to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Agreed. Okay. Councilor McDonald.
Let's just have one more thought. If anyone is in dispute or needs clarification, can the integrity commissioner provide some guidance on this? On possible decisions that aren't agreed upon?
Yeah, John, you also act as an integrity commissioner for many
I
municipalities. So think
I
you're
do.
well poised to answer.
Yes, could I, Mr. Mayor, because this question's been asked several times of me. The answer is, and by the way, I have spoken to your integrity commissioner, Councillor McDonald, and I believe you can certainly ask them, but I believe we're probably ad item. My answer typically is the use of the strong mayor powers. Can we go to our integrity commissioner? And my answer is no. The question is a legal question. It's not an ethical question. And I fully believe that I'm probably going to get a number of complaints about the use of the strong mayor powers. But the question is not whether it's an ethical use of the power. Question is, does the mayor have the legal means? And that's not something that's within the wheelhouse of the jurisdiction of an integrity commissioner. I've been trying to impress that upon the council members and in these open sessions so the public understands, because I really do think that some people may attempt to use the integrity commissioner avenue to say the mayor shouldn't have done this, and therefore I'm going to say he didn't act with honesty, integrity. And I don't think that's the real issue. The question is, can the mayor use them legally? And that's a legal question that's not within the purview of an integrity commissioner.
Thank you.
That's a good question, though, and it reminded me of our code of conduct. And it sounds like there will be going to be, soon enough, there'll be a provincial code of conduct, which may render ours kind of moot, because there will be one code of conduct to rule them all, and perhaps even one integrity commissioner with some of the changes being proposed. But in the meantime, we have a code of conduct. And would there be any sections that we need to, edit or rewrite with the assistance of, in our case, principles integrity to reflect the strong mayor changes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So I can answer it this way, and I don't want to speak for Jeff and Janice, who are well equipped and qualified to answer the question for you. My response to my municipalities that have strong mayors is, I really don't think you need more than a couple of tweaks in it. Typically, there is a provision somewhere in the Code of Conduct that says members of council cannot direct staff. And as I spent some time today saying, the mayor now can do this, and it would be confusing potentially if you didn't change that one provision. Someone could misunderstand that. Of course, an integrity commissioner who knows what they're doing would say, well, there's strong mayor powers, and of course I have to read down down that provision that says a member of council can't do that, to say it doesn't necessarily include the mayor. But that's the one tweak that I've made to some codes of conduct. Otherwise, I think the code of conduct can pretty much stay the way it is, and I don't know that you need to have any, amendments, modifications, revisions. Remember, provincial statute overrules what a bylaw or a code of conduct may provide. So I don't think that you're going to have to make some significant changes, but Principles Integrity would be well equipped to answer that for you.
Thank you. I think your point near at the beginning, ultimately, either the using these new powers or not using them, either way, kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Ultimately, it'll be the court of the voters, the public opinion court, at each election cycle as to whether you were efficient and effective either with or without the powers. So I think ultimately that's going to be the group that are going to hold strong mayors to account. It will be at the election cycle. So there's nothing else. Thank you again, John. I appreciate your time and effort today. It's been very educational, and I'm sure we'll reach. Oh, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe I saw Councillor Ball raise her hand. I wasn't aware that she was in attendance.
Oh, I don't see her. Council.
Thank you. I wasn't, I joined late, so I wasn't a panelist, so I wasn't able to do anything but raise my hand until
Oh, well,
now.
please. I mean, you may have a litany of questions for John. Please,
No, I
fire
just
away. You have the floor.
sorry. I just had one question actually, if the public wanted to take this to the provincial government that they are against this, maybe I missed this, is that something that they are eligible to do? Is that obviously we're not changing the government's mind, but if the general masses would like to take that up with the provincial government, is that something that they are able to do? Or do you think that will have an effect?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Paul, that's an interesting question. So let me just put it this way: the provincial government, the Doug Ford government, has won 3 successive majorities, and I don't know that there's going to be this huge groundswell of persons coming forward to lobby against this that will have any material impact at this time. I think this government has been very, very clear. They want the landscape to change, and the Premier had his vision and has been implementing it. I suppose if at election time this were to come forward as an election issue, it might be quite different. You might see maybe something, but I just don't see, the streets being run over with people saying, you need to change this and revoke strong mayor powers everywhere. In fact, it just doesn't seem to coincide with what the provincial government's doing, including Bill 17 that it just enacted. So I don't really see that, but that's just my my layman's perspective on it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I mean, deciding to do some elective initiatives and taking away democracy and their voice within council is a little different, but maybe people haven't caught on to that exact ramifications of this choice. So I appreciate that.
All right. Anybody else lurking? I don't want to miss anyone. The opportunity. No. Okay. All right. Again, thank you very much, John. And I'm sure we'll reach out if we have any need for follow up. And if things change in the world of these powers, then I'm sure you will be making a new round to help explain it to municipalities. But for now, it is what it is, and I guess we'll be judged on how we use them or don't use them accordingly.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you and the rest of council for your you've listened to me speak for about over 2.5 hours, and I thank you very much. It's my privilege to come and speak today, and thank you for asking me. And I will be available should you need anything further coming forward. So thank you again for the opportunity, and I wish you all the best with this matter going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, council, I have a motion here moved by Councillor East, seconded by Councillor Patel, that staff report CSR 2025-52 Strong Mayor Powers dated May 14, 2025 be received for information, and that the presentation provided by John Masker and Barrelis LLP with respect to Strong Mayor Powers be received for information. That staff report is on the agenda. You know what? I didn't read the staff report. I knew this was coming, as if. All right, well, I'm going to own that right now. I guess I know the information that's in it, but anyway, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had prepared a staff report in advance of the presentation by John Mascaron, just to give council a heads up and give a high-level overview of the strong mayor powers in the legislation. So it's just to be received for information, and I'm sure all of council's questions were answered today.
Thanks. Just skim reading it. Yeah, this is exactly the subject matter that we were just presented. So thank you very much for that report, and it's good to have it in writing. So back to the motion on the floor. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. All right, moved by Deputy Mayor Prost, seconded by Councillor Meredith, the bylaw 2025-31 being a bylaw to adopt proceedings of special meeting of council held today, May 14, 2025, be passed and enacted. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And last but not least, moved by Councillor Bald, seconded by Councillor East, that the special meeting of council adjourn at 12:58 p.m. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully it was educational.